Hi everyone, Hirsch Sai here, reporting from Auckland, New Zealand, and today is the 29th of January 2024. This is a bit of a random video, just, putting together some things that I've accumulated over time, and it's just things, it's probably more of a reflection on my personal intelligence or me as opposed to anyone else. But it's just a collection of things that I just couldn't believe I didn't know. So when I actually heard about them, I was like, oh, so that's why it is that way, or well, that's what it means, or that's where it came from. And I've actually like noted these things, just a few of them, about or 10 of them or so, on my phone, and I just thought I'd mention them because hopefully I'm not alone. Um, Back at university, this is the first thing I did a Bachelor of Commerce and Administration. And commerce, if you've ever wondered, commerce simply comes from the word commercial. So, meaning business, of course, or anything like that. So, to be honest, I did not know that at the very beginning that that's where commerce comes from, the word commercial. And related to that, where do you think the word student comes from? Like I was a student when I was at university. Simply put, a student studies. So that's where the word student comes from, a student studies. To be honest, I did not know that at first. Someone told me not long ago that the little stickers on apples, at least here in New Zealand, are actually edible. They don't look edible to me, and I never knew that they were edible. I mean, she might be right, she might be wrong. I probably wouldn't put it to the test. But she was saying, believe it or not, but those little stickers that we always peel off of apples are actually edible. So according to her, that's the case. I remember someone else telling me, who in the world makes the most cars? Well, it's actually Matchbox, if we're just saying cars in general and not what type of car or what size of car or a real drivable car. So, who makes the most cars? Matchbox. And on a similar note, who makes the most tires in the world? Lego. And believe it or not. What's another one? Yeah, sometimes we hear about the term POM, like someone from Britain, a POM, or all that. If you ever wondered, POM actually stands for something. It stands for Prisoner of the Motherland. I didn't know that at first. POM stands for Prisoner of the Motherland. That's an interesting one. And a bit of a related thing, and another fact that you may not know completely, of course, I've all heard the term of, countries being either first world, second world, or third world. And first world is generally, people would think is what we refer to, the more affluent, developed nations as usually Western nations as first world. Second world sort of being somewhere in between. And on that note, the third world being basically the developing nations such as those in Asia, Africa, South America. So first world developed nations, third world basically developing, and second world somewhere in between. And that's what I thought as well. But actually, that's not true. The whole terminology behind classifying countries as either first, second, or third world actually comes from a model which was used back during the Cold War, whereas the first world countries are, yes, the more affluent, developed Western nations, such as basically, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand, broadly speaking. And the second world countries are actually those. The communist countries, so all those countries in the Soviet Union, also Eastern Europe, and then you've got China, Cuba, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and North Korea. I think especially at the time, that's what it was at the time. Obviously, the communist countries are fewer now, but those countries at the time during the Cold War were referred to as second world countries. And then, of course, the third world countries were all the remaining countries, basically the developing nations of Asia, Africa, and South America. So that's actually where that terminology comes from: first world, second world, and third world countries. Um, Another one, which I also learned in just recent years, was that it might sound obvious, but believe it or not, but in pretty much everything you do, your subconscious actually does about 90% of the work. And I remember looking this up, Googling it, and all the websites that I saw said exactly that. Your subconscious does 90% of the work, except for one website I saw, which said it does 95% of the work. So let's say if we take that as fact, therefore, or as very likely to be fact, that your subconscious does 90% of the work, you might think, what do you mean? Well, it's very simple. Like One example I thought of earlier was, say, making a cup of tea. Say you go to make yourself a cup of tea, and during making the cup of tea, you can be thinking about something at the same time, or talking to someone else at the same time. You could be even be thinking about something very in depth at the same time, perhaps even making a life altering decision at the same time. Should I buy that house? Should I marry her or not? Should I move to that other city? Should I quit my job and take up my dream career of freelancing and this or that? You can actually be thinking about something very intense and very serious while still making a cup of tea and basically not even focus on making the cup of tea. But if we look at it, making a cup of tea, believe it or not, if you really break it down to its individual tasks, it's actually a very, very complicated procedure. And again, you don't notice this because it's your subconscious that takes care of all that. Put it this way. Okay, let's say we want to make a cup of tea. Let's do that. In steps, basically, what you have to do: first, walk into the kitchen, walk to the pantry, open the pantry, get out a cup. It's a bit more complicated if you want a specific cup or your favorite cup, and that's a cup, not a plate or a bowl or a glass. A cup. Get it, close the pantry door, walk to the kitchen counter, put the cup down, look at the hot water jug. If there's enough water in it, sweet, put it on. If not, okay, lift it up off its stand, open the cap, take it to the sink, put it under the tap, put the tap on, and so the water flows until it's at the required level or the level you want it to be at. Put the tap off, bring it back, put it back on the stand, put the cap on, put it on, and I think you get the idea. It's if you break it, and we're not even halfway through, are we? Of our forever quest, our never-ending quest to make a lifelong quest to make a cup of tea. I mean, there's so many steps to go with the tea bag, the sugar, the milk if you have it, and then anything else that you want to do, such as put it in a saucer with a teaspoon or whatever. So, and it's your subconscious that do that. A very good example, which I think we can all relate to, is whenever we leave home in a rush to go to work or wherever we need to go, and suddenly we're thinking, oh, did I lock the door? And we race back sometimes because we're really worried we didn't lock the door, or say close the garage door after we exited it. And then what do we find? In all probability, we did lock the door, we did close the garage. But why don't you remember it? It's because your subconscious did it at the time. You're probably thinking about something completely different, but it's your subconscious that actually handled it at the time. So it's amazing, isn't it? Your subconscious does about 90% of the work and pretty much everything you do, whereas it's your brain that's, doing the rest. And sometimes someone might ask you a question and it's your subconscious that immediately comes up with it, especially if you already know the answer or it's in there. Like someone says to you, oh, what's the capital of Spain? Immediately think, oh, Madrid, and it's in that split second, your mind, went into its files, if you like, is like, okay, Spain, facts about Spain, capital city. Oh, this is it. Here we go, Madrid. In that split second, your brain came up with it. And sometimes that's what happens, isn't it? You're asked a question, and it's actually your subconscious that immediately comes up with an answer. Even if it's a very sophisticated answer or a good answer, it's your subconscious that comes up with it, as opposed to sort of, you individually. And sometimes you can add to it by thinking hard. Consciously and make it an even better answer, but chances are your subconscious does a lot of the work there, which is very interesting. Like you see a movie or you hear a speech, and immediately afterwards you can basically give a summary of it, and your subconscious has pretty much already prepared that. So it's amazing how much your subconscious does. I think we should probably move on from that point. What else is there? I think there was just one more, which is a really interesting one, and actually one I certainly did not know until I heard it. Was the internet. As you know, the internet has long been heralded as the one thing, the major technological breakthrough, or advance that allowed people to work from home, that allowed people to basically work on anything from anywhere at almost any time as well. That's actually not true, believe it or not. Before the internet, long before the internet, we had landline phones and fax machines. I think fax machines came in around about the 70s or late 70s, certainly the early 80s, a bit before my time. But I think fax machines came in around that time, say late 70s, early 80s, where of course the internet, while it started in 1993, it didn't really become common and affordable, commonplace and affordable until pretty much, I would say, the late 90s, even early 2000s. I mean, I didn't start using the internet until about on a regular basis until about 2002, if I remember correctly, and I didn't have my own email address until then as well. Despite I remember I first heard of the internet back in 1996 when I was 11. But coming back to the point, it's interesting. Yes, the internet has allowed us, if you like, to work from home, work on anything from anywhere at any time. But before the internet, at least for a good 10 or 10 to 15 years, like I said, we actually had landline phones and fax machines. And if you think about it, they were obviously they're not as sophisticated as what we've got today with the internet, and now, of course, with smartphones as well. But they were sufficient. If you wanted to, given if your job was a desk job, and basically if you were processing documentation, like in a lot of desk jobs, a landline phone and a fax machine is basically all you needed. Rather than emailing someone, you could call them and, discuss things, figure things out, plan things, make notes on what you have to do, and then that would be that. It's probably actually time saving, or probably more better usage of time compared to emails, although emails have other advantages, like you can think about what you say before you say it, and it's all in front of you, it's all documented, it's all on the record. It's obviously easier for email if you're trying to message many people at a time, but I mean, but in general, landline phones were basically sufficient. They were enough. You could discuss what you needed to do with someone on the other end of the line, and then you could do it. Whether you were writing it down by hand or whether you were typing it up, you could prepare it in its form, and then have it as hard copy, and then fax it to where it needed to go, when you were finished, as opposed to emailing it. So it's interesting. I actually never thought about that either. Maybe because fax machines were a bit sort of before my time. But if you really look at it, we really did have the ability to work from home, at the very least in theory, long before the internet, with landline phones and fax machines. Obviously, not as easy as it is today. Obviously, today with smartphones, you can just take a picture of something and immediately send it to someone, as opposed to, say, back then having to photocopy it and then fax that to someone. But in principle, we could have worked from home long before the internet, with landline phones and fax machines. And so it's one of those things that makes you think sometimes it's not really the technology, which is why things work or don't work, but sometimes it's actually our usage of it, or basically just human behavior. And another good example of that was during COVID. We realized that actually we can work from home with the current technology, being the internet and smartphones. We actually can work from home and pretty easily, because we were basically forced to do that at the time. So yeah, just a bunch of random things, I guess, but some things that hopefully some of you didn't know all completely. But just when I heard of them, I was like, oh, I really didn't know that at first. I honestly had never figured that out. So hey, hopefully something that brightened your day. If not, got a few more other videos to pick and choose from. Feel free to take your pick. Thank you.